While most topics seem to cover infamous missing persons cases from North America, it's important to remember that mysteriously people vanish every day from all over the world. Some truly mind-boggling missing persons cases from the UK don't usually get the attention they deserve. Here are 5 infamous unsolved missing persons cases from the United Kingdom. Number 5. Although the case of missing Lord Lucan is rather dated, it's still one of Britain's most popular notorious unsolved cases and is still worth mentioning. Richard John Bingham was the 7th Earl of Lucan, of course better known as Lord Lucan. He was a British peer, aristocrat, gambler, and banker who was famous not only in his community but across Britain as well. He made a name for himself in the United States after traveling around the country racking up gambling debts and living a lavish life in the public eye. While Lucan began a nasty split with his wife, he moved to an apartment away from the family home. His wife told friends and peers that Lucan had previously been violent towards her, and even hinted that if she wound up deceased one day, she would not be surprised if he was responsible. After their breakup, a custody battle over the couple's children quickly followed. During this time, Lucan allegedly spied on his wife using private investigators and tactics that could be described as stalking. Despite previously paying off a massive gambling debt, during the custody battle, he once again spiraled out of control with his addiction. In 1974, Lucan's former wife Veronica hired a young woman named Sandra Eleanor Rivet to work as a nanny and look after the children. Sandra usually spent every Thursday evening with her boyfriend, a fact that was known by Veronica, Lucan, and many close friends and relatives of the nanny. However, on November 7, 1974, Sandra changed her usual schedule and was at Veronica's home with the children. Just before 9 p.m., Sandra put the children to bed and walked down to the kitchen. That was where she was attacked by an intruder that busted through the back door and struck her in the head several times with a covered piece of pipe. She passed away from multiple injuries from her attacker, and he placed her body in a bag on the kitchen floor. Around this time, Veronica began to wonder what was taking Sandra so long. The nanny had previously told Veronica that she would bring her a cup of hot tea. Veronica called for Sandra from the top of the stairs, where she was attacked by the intruder from behind. Veronica and the suspect, who would later be confirmed to be Lord Lucan, struggled through the home for several minutes as they both suffered various injuries. Eventually, their fight came to a stop, and Veronica inquired about the nanny. Lucan confessed to his crime, and in a ploy to manipulate the madman, Veronica made a deal with him that she would help him cover it up and escape if he allowed her to hide away in the home for a few days while the wounds on her face, which he had given her, healed. Lucan agreed, and as soon as his back was turned, Veronica darted toward the alarm. Lucan apparently then left the home and later called his elderly mother. In the phone call, he behaved as though he was in shock and created a story of lies. He told his mother that he drove by the wife's home and saw the front door open, so he decided to stop by. Once inside, he claimed that he had to face off with an intruder who had attacked both Sandra and Veronica. It's unclear exactly where this call was sent from, but at the time, police were in the process of forcing their way into Veronica's home and discovering the horrific scene left behind. Evidence later proved that sometime during that same evening, Lucan drove 42 miles to Uckfield, where he met with Maxwell Scott's family, who were close friends of his. This is the last ever confirmed sighting of Lucan. After this, he seemingly vanished without a trace. There have been a multitude of reported sightings from all over the globe over the following decades, but none were ever confirmed to be true, and the final fate of Lord Lucan is still a mystery to this day. Number 4. Richard James Edwards, also known as Richey James or Richey Edwards, is a popular Welsh lyricist and singer of the alternative rock band Manic Street Preachers. In January of 1995, about a week before Richey and his bandmate, James Bradfield, were meant to take a trip to the US, Richey began withdrawing about $200 from his bank account every day over the course of several days. The total amount withdrawn on the day that his flight was scheduled to America was about £2,800. This would usually be a red flag for a musician, but considering the fact that he later vanished, the money is seen as an important fact in the case. Richey was last seen leaving his hotel room at around 7 a.m. February 1st, 1995, the day of his scheduled flight. He gathered most of his belongings and checked out of the hotel. Evidence shows that he then traveled to his apartment, but it's unclear how long he was there. In just a few hours, he was considered missing by his bandmates. Over the next 2 weeks, witness reports confirmed that he was last seen at the Newport Passport Office and Newport bus station. On February 7th, Richey was allegedly picked up by a taxi driver, although this couldn't be confirmed. The driver explained that Richey took him on a strange ride after he picked him up from King's Hotel. Richey requested that he drive him around the valleys and through his hometown of Blackwood. When they arrived at a bus station in Blackwood, where Richey had formerly requested to be dropped off, the passenger told the driver this is not the place and asked to be taken elsewhere. The passenger finally got out at the Severn View service station and paid £68 to the driver. It was also mentioned that Richey spoke in a peculiar Cockney accent, but at times would slip up and exhibit his natural Welsh manner of speaking. He also laid down in the back seat several times as though he was sick or under the influence, according to the driver. On February 14th, Richey's car was ticketed at Severn View service station, and 3 days later it was reported as abandoned. Police investigated the vehicle and determined that it showed signs of being used as a living space. The battery had died at least a week before the investigation. The general area was a well-known spot for victims who took their own lives, and upon hearing the news, the public began to speculate that Richey had jumped from a nearby bridge. According to those who were close to him, though, that would have been extremely out of character for the performer, who famously stated, in terms of the S-word, that does not enter my mind, and it never has in terms of an attempt. Because I'm stronger than that. I might be a weak person, but I can take pain. He stated this during an interview just a year before he had vanished. A series of reported sightings occurred in the years that followed Richey's disappearance, especially early on. Some of these sightings were phoned in, claiming to have seen the artist, in several countries all throughout the world. However, none of these sightings were confirmed by investigators, and his case remains an unsolved mystery in Great Britain's history. Number 3. Despite his disappearance 12 years ago, Andrew Bunby's family still holds on to hope for finding their loved one. 33-year-old Andrew had previously gone through a serious breakup, and despite owning a flat in the city, had taken to living on the street. From the very beginning, this was an alarming change for his family, who remained in a constant state of worry for his well-being. Andrew agreed to keep in contact with his loved ones as much as he could to ease their concerns. Because of this promise, Andrew called his family every single day, and even when he did miss a check-in, it wasn't for very long. Additionally, Andrew never missed a medical appointment, meaning that when he suddenly stopped calling his family and missed several doctor's appointments in January of 2007, his family was instantly shaken. Only a few days had passed without a word from Andrew before he was reported missing. Relatives offered police with a photo, description, and explanation of his most common whereabouts. A search team went to working the city streets, suburban areas, hotels, jails, and hospitals in hopes of quickly locating the wandering man. Unfortunately, the search carried on for weeks without a trace or sign of Andrew, much to his family's dismay. The searching continued, and many missing persons flyers were posted across various cities and locations where Andrew was known to frequent. A few weeks after vanishing, police received a call from a witness in the Pocklington area who claimed to have seen Andrew walking along a busy city street. Officers immediately arrived on the scene after receiving the call but were unable to locate him. As is common with missing persons cases who don't hold a permanent address, the likelihood of Andrew traveling across the vast area was very high. The search stretched in distance to cover new areas where Andrew may have been located. At first, it was assumed by police that Andrew was simply on the move and had not yet seen or heard of his own disappearance. Several months later, though, the overall speculation of investigators grew much darker as they assumed the victim may have harmed himself or taken his own life. Since 2007, when Andrew last contacted his family, he has not been seen since. There were a few witness sightings in the early stages of the case, but none could be confirmed, and overall there was no sign of Andrew. In December of 2019, police moved forward and assuming that the man was no longer alive. His family, however, disagrees with this assumption and holds on to hope that their loved one is simply misplaced or perhaps wandering the streets, either harmed or lost. Number 2. On December 8, 2014, 32-year-old Damien Vernon left his home in Bridlington on a short trip to purchase a new car. An event that would otherwise be filled with joy quickly became a tragedy when the man went missing. Damien set out to Sheffield to a car lot where he was scheduled to make a purchase where he mysteriously vanished. His family was aware of his plan and looked forward to hearing back from him after he drove home in his shiny new vehicle. Sadly, he was never heard from again, and the following day he was reported missing by his family. Damien apparently kept in constant contact with his loved ones, and even just a few hours later with no word, the man sent his family into a frenzy. According to an online article, a search followed, and police dug through hundreds of hours of CCTV footage and embarked on a 35-mile search of the River Calder. Additionally, police responded to a series of witness reports which claimed to have seen Damien in several locations across the city. Not a single trace of a viable lead was ever found. The last confirmed sighting of Damien came from a witness who reported seeing him walking down an alleyway on an estate in Wakefield. The search continued with both experts and volunteers working night and day to find the missing man, but after a year of hard work, the investigation and search was scaled back due to both lack of leads and a lack of budget. In 2017, an official public statement was issued, and a spokesperson stated, 3 years after the unexplained disappearance of Damien, we are issuing an appeal for anyone who knows anything about Damien's disappearance to come forward. Officers investigating his disappearance have completed all lines of inquiry in June of 2015. Since this time, no new leads of inquiry have ever been found. Number 1. The case of a missing woman named Renata is notorious simply because of the case's fame and its relatively recent unfolding. Renata was last seen on April 25, 2017, after dropping her daughter off at school, a mundane task that she completed every single school day. When Renata went the entire day without contacting friends or relatives, failing to pick up her children for school, and missing her dentist appointment scheduled for later that evening, Renata was reported missing by relatives. A search quickly followed, which covered the most common areas Renata visited and even collected witness interviews amongst colleagues, school employees, and Renata's close friends. Sadly, she was not located. A year passed, still without any sign of the missing woman, and investigators pointed their attention at her husband, the dentist who she had an appointment with later that day. He had remained silent over the previous year, but police found reason to believe that he could have been at fault. This portion of the investigation showed that the doctor had recently recruited a patient to purchase a drug known as GHB, commonly used to assault women. Allegedly, he wanted to use this on his wife so that he could obtain her fingerprints. He planned to use the prints to unlock her iPhone after he believed that she had engaged in an affair. Even after this information was discovered and the doctor was at the center of the investigation, he publicly denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. Charges were later filed against him for obtaining the drug and possibly killing his wife. However, murder charges could not be filed due to a lack of a body. While the public as well as relatives of Renata do believe that the doctor did take his wife's life, there's simply not enough evidence to prove this. Therefore, the case has remained a baffling mystery for years. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.